Britney Spears' conservatorship was set up during that time. So Vivian Lee Thoreen left Holland and Knight in April of 2008, 1 month after she helped put Britney's conservatorship into place.
Oh God.
Any parent knows raising children can be extremely gratifying and frustrating all at the same time.
We all want our children to succeed. What happens when they do?
Oh God.
For Lynn Spears, the mother of two star daughters, Britney and Jamie Lynn, the highs and lows of parenting have been especially intense, and they've all played out in the public eye.
I think the biggest regrets that I have right now, by looking back, I didn't follow my mother's intuition a lot of times, or my gut instincts. I would let people talk me into things, or, influence me.
So generally, whenever I find stuff like this, like the first place I go to, talk about it is Twitter. But if you want like more coherent streams of consciousness, but still streams of consciousness like the one here, you should subscribe to this channel and sign up for notifications. Just to give you the context of like where I started whenever I was doing this investigating this morning is I went on the internet and made a video on July 16th. So this was like a month ago, called, Vivian and Bruce, Besties, the world is getting smaller. It looks like this. Hello, everybody. And it was basically an article that had been published in like 2012 or 13 or 11 or something, where it showed that Vivian Lee Thoreen, Daddy, which is Jamie's lawyer, Daddy, the one who says Daddy, Daddy. Okay, so July 14th, I'm sitting in court in LA, front row, starving. I was like sitting in the line to get in for so long, and they were like, we'll let you go get a snack soon. We're gonna make a list. The list never happened. 3 hours passed, 5 hours passed.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Whatever. But I remember it was all still kind of like virtual or whatever, and I don't know who it was exactly, but there's like this guy in like official, looked like maybe a police, I don't know. This guy is calling roll basically, saying like, is Jamie Spears here? Is Britney here? Is Lynn here? Is this person here? That person? Vivian? Daddy? Whoever, whatever. Sam Ingham, all these people. And one of the people he was saying is Bruce Ross. Is Mr. Bruce Ross here? Is Mr. Bruce Ross here? And I heard the name so many times because Mr. Bruce Ross, bless his soul, was having a hard time connecting to the Zoom. The court couldn't hear him, or he couldn't hear the court. I think it was the court couldn't hear him. But everybody else was fine and connecting. And it was like, I heard this name Bruce Ross, Mr. Ross, over and over. And it stuck in my head. 2 days later, somehow, some way, and you can go look, July 16th, I made that video. I made a video before that where I had just purchased literally $300 worth of documents from the LA court, from like the old documents from like 2008, 9, 10, 12, 15, right? Because I've never gone through them, and I know that there has to be information in there that's useful to me, right? So I'm looking through, and it's a minute order, and I have a video on this too. I can look it up in a second. And this minute order mentioned an attorney named B. Ross, and what was being discussed. A minute order is basically like a Cliff's Notes for what happened in court. It's not a transcript. It's just like a minutes, like if you're in a corporate meeting and they're taking the minutes, like then there was elections. They're not gonna tell you everything that was said. It's just like, okay, there was elections. So this minute order from 2009 mentions a person named B. Ross. And Vivian Lee Thoreen was there. Daddy. Holland and Knight was there. Daddy. For this meeting. The minute order discusses fees being paid to Holland and Knight. But then it says, before they officially like swore people in and took their appearances, right, Mr. B. Ross leaves the court. I'm like, could this be the same Bruce Ross? Then I start looking him up. Turns out a Bruce Ross did work at Holland and Knight, and now he works at Bessemer Trust Company. So we end up finding out that he and Vivian worked together on several high-profile cases, including Anna Nicole Smith's, which went to the Supreme Court, Mickey Rooney, which is one of the most high-profile conservatorship cases of all time ever. But it was one of those cases where it was like maybe dementia, whatever. So all that, is already happened. We all already knew that. But somebody from my Twitter or Instagram had sent me the text of a lawsuit where Vivian and Bruce are both as defendants in a case being sued for legal malpractice. And in this case, filed in 2019, they represented someone who ended up paying them over $3 million for the case. And this person is alleging that there's all kinds of conflicts of interest, that they didn't inform her of her right to hire her own attorney. Sound familiar? All this stuff we end up finding out. Also, they went to Congress together to talk about the Mickey Rooney case. So I kind of started looking up this morning, like, what's going on with these two, And I literally just Googled, and again, like, You can do this research. Like, everyone can do this research. You can do this. I just Googled Vivian Lee Thoreen, Bruce Ross, and all kinds of stuff comes up this morning. So it's this Heckerling Institute on estate planning seminar, and shows that Vivian Lee Thoreen and Bruce Ross spoke at a conference together on the same panel in January of 2012, just more showing their connection to each other. And I'm just kind of like clicking on everything on Google that comes up, like clicking the links. And I see this next LA Business Journal article is from 2008, and it's just talking about all these different lawyers that are doing things in LA. So this one is talking about private wealth is the name of the heading, and it's from LA Business Journal. Bruce S. Ross, this is from 2008, a veteran trust and estates attorney who represents the estate of late Anna Nicole Smith, returned to Los Angeles office of Holland & Knight, LLP, as a partner. Now that's where Vivian and Jonathan Park both are lawyers for Jamie. In a conservatorship case, they both work at Holland & Knight now in the LA office. We already knew that he worked at Holland & Knight. Ross returned to the firm with a group of 5 trust and estate lawyers who moved from Holland & Knight in 2006 to join the Los Angeles office of Luce Forward, Hamilton, and Scripps. And I'm like, Luce Forward, Hamilton, and Scripps. This is exactly what happened. Ross returned to the firm with a group of 5 trust and estate lawyers who moved from Holland & Knight in 2006 to join the Los Angeles office of Luce Forward, Hamilton, and Scripps. The group left after Holland & Knight announced the consolidation or closure of 9 offices. Now, the reason Luce Forward, Hamilton, and Scripps sounded familiar to me is that is where Gerald and Geraldine work. Gerald and Geraldine are also Jamie's lawyers. So just to recap, they worked there at this Luce Forward, Hamilton, and Scripps. And it ain't a big, huge international thing. Like Holland & Knight, it could be a coincidence, like it's a huge office or whatever, but this is like a group of 6 people who traveled together from Holland & Knight to this law firm, Luce Forward, Hamilton, and Scripps, then 2 years later, back to Holland & Knight again. Importantly, Britney Spears' conservatorship was set up during that time. So Bruce Ross, Vivian Lee Thoreen, and conceivably, right, this is what I'm thinking at the time, conceivably, Geraldine, all, and we can look at the court documents and see where they were working at the time, but they all worked at this one law firm. And at least Vivian and Bruce worked there when Britney was put into the conservatorship. Now we know Vivian's name is on those original conservatorship documents, and so is Geraldine. So I'm starting to put this all together. After a 2-year stint with them, Ross and another partner, Sean Higgins, senior counsel Linda Rotman, and associate Vivian Lee Thoreen, Jonathan Park, and Tony Yu jumped back to the 1100 attorney firm, Tampa, Florida-based Holland & Knight has at least 50 probate attorneys firm-wide. Again, this is from 2008. So Vivian Lee Thoreen left Holland & Knight in April of 2008, 1 month after she helped to put Britney's conservatorship into place. So the lawyers at Luce Forward, Hamilton, Scripps, Gerald and Geraldine, they stayed on the case, as far as the public is aware, the whole time through the conservatorship. But Vivian just came back in 2020, and it just raises the question, like, is that true? Or has she been kind of working as a consultant on the side on the case, or have they been working with her? I don't know. But I do think it is very interesting that she was there with Bruce in 2008 when the conservatorship was set up, meaning Bruce was at the firm that set up the conservatorship when it was set up, right? Like that firm filed to establish the conservatorship. And actually, it's making me think right now, I do want to go back and look at those 2008 documents and see if I can find his name anywhere else. Because I guarantee you one thing, I'm not a specialist whenever it comes to conflicts of interest, but if he worked at the firm that Jamie enlisted to help him establish this conservatorship at the time it was established, and he worked on the conservatorship in establishing it, I do think that it is a conflict of interest for him to then be opposed to Jamie in a future hearing type of situation. And maybe that was the conflict. Ross, who's been practicing trust and estate law for 30 years, represented Howard Stern as executor of Anna Nicole Smith's will. The litigation ended in March with Smith's daughter, Danny Lynn, inheriting her estate. Okay. So I'm like, hold on. Bessemer Trust Company was supposed to be an independent corporate fiduciary. And it is very important to note, Bessemer Trust Company is not their lawyer, okay? So I do not know what they know, what they knew, what they didn't know. What I do know for sure is this guy, Bruce Ross, was in the position that if there was some type of disagreement between Britney and her best interest and what Jamie had done, there was gonna be some type of a fight in court, right? And who fights in court? Lawyers. So it's not gonna be Bessemer Trust Company standing there fighting with Jamie. No, they're gonna just be sitting there on Zoom or in the courtroom while the lawyers fight with each other, while the lawyers make the deals with each other. So did anyone know about this close personal relationship between Vivian and Bruce? I mean, they have gone all over the place to conferences together. They worked on cases together. Then I found another, I mean, I'll say smoking gun, but it's not. It's a court case, an appeal from 2008 maybe, and it's Bruce Ross, Geraldine, and Vivian Lee Thoreen, along with one other lawyer, on a case together. So it's not like, oh, they all happen to work, oh, it's a conspiracy, they all happen to work in the same law firm. No. They've worked on a case together. Bruce, who represents now Bessemer, as recently as July 14th, he was representing Bessemer Trust Company, having a real hard time logging onto the Zoom. You have Bruce Ross, who used to be at Holland & Knight, who used to be at Geraldine's firm, now at Bessemer Trust Company. You have Vivian Lee Thoreen, who was kind of like his mentee, right? He was her mentor, who's at Holland & Knight now, where he used to be. And then you have Geraldine Weil, another of Jamie's attorneys. So it's like, could he really have been independent? Like, conceivably, he would have been the one responsible for arguing the case. He would have been the one responsible for arguing with and against and opposing Vivian. And it kind of reminded me of something that Matthew Rosengart said on that same day, July 14th. Brenda Penny, the judge on the case, was asking him a bunch of questions before she officially allowed him to be appointed. And she asked him, do you have a large trust and estates practice at your firm? And, you know, all this stuff. One thing that Matthew Rosengart said was that the firm has the ability to be opposed to Holland & Knight, right? The judge asked him, do you have any conflicts of interest? Have Jamie or Lynn or any of the other parties in the case come forward and try to hire you before, hire this firm before, anything like that? He said no. And it's like, at the time, I figured that was just a routine question because it is common sense. You would need to know that, right? But I'm wondering if it wasn't the case that it took so long to get that order signed, right? If you remember, Bessemer was approved by the judge in the courtroom in November. It wasn't until June or July that it was finally submitted to the court and signed and done all those months. It was months and months and months from November to June or November to July. But there was negotiations, there was meet and confers, there was holds on the calendar where they were, you know, not doing anything, and all this stuff was going on. And it's like, I wonder if somebody didn't find out about this potential for a conflict. Listen, I'm not an expert necessarily on, you know, lawyer conflicts and things. But what I will say is, the common sense of the situation does make me wonder whether or not Bruce Ross could act in Britney's best interest, despite having these close personal relationships to Vivian Lee Thoreen and Jonathan Park. And, you know, he would be being opposed to them and perhaps having a relationship with Geraldine, as he has worked together with her on a case before. Now listen, I've worked with people on cases before that I can't stand.
Let's put that in.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, it just brings into question, you know, how did Bessemer really come into Britney's purview? I mean, Lynn Spears also nominated Bessemer, and Britney herself did. I feel obligated to say, I'm not a Britney Spears handwriting expert, but a lot of her fans have seen her signature a lot of times and have told me Britney did not sign that Bessemer order. I don't know. I do feel like I need to say that some people do believe that Britney did not sign that. I have reason to believe she didn't, like, you know, do we know if we can trust Sam Mangum and stuff like that? But I guess I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say she did. If she did, she's in a situation where she has told us with her own words. She can't even go to the doctor to get this IUD taken out. She can't even see her kids and boyfriend when she wants to. She can't leave the treatment facilities that they put her in. And so, does she have unfettered access to researching financial firms and interviewing them without influence and without being under duress and without other people telling her what and what not to do? Is it more likely that she was given a list of firms to choose from that could be a corporate fiduciary? She chose that one, but is it possible that all of them on that perhaps potential list could have had some type of conflict or whatever, or interest in the outcome of this case? Maybe. And the reason I say that is because she told us with her own words, she was only given 2 therapists or psychiatrists or whatever it was to choose from. So maybe that is how they give her these choices and then later hold those choices against her. It's like, yeah, she had a choice, but y'all gave her 2 options. So it's like, yo, it's Britney's choice. How many options did Britney have to choose from financial firms to be her corporate fiduciary? Why did it take so long to get this order approved? Why did Britney choose Bessemer? Maybe she had a good reason. It's a very reputable firm and they do this type of work. To me, it just raises questions. I haven't come up with any conclusion yet, other than the fact that Bruce and Vivian go way back. They've worked on cases together. They've worked at least 2 law firms together. And, you know, this article that I read did say that after he left Holland & Knight, he was going to retire. In Bessemer's resignation, they said they came on because they were told this was a voluntary conservatorship. Remember that? Mm-hmm. It was voluntary. It was voluntary. Sam Ingham told me it was voluntary. It was voluntary, right? All that stuff about it being voluntary. And they were like, we are going to take Britney for her word that she doesn't want to be in this and all this. And they looked like such good guys or whatever. The reason that's important is because of conflicts. Because in a voluntary conservatorship, it's considered to be not a contested conservatorship. When a conservatorship is contested, it's treated more like a trial where there's hearings and, factual findings are necessary, right? When a conservatorship is not contested, that means it's voluntary, which is a very, very misleading word. These voluntary conservatorships, it's not as much like opposing sides. Does that make sense? So in this particular situation, Vivian and Bessemer were not opposed to each other because they were under the false impression it was a voluntary conservatorship. But as soon as Britney came out and said, I don't want to be in a conservatorship, it's abusive and all this other stuff, it created an environment where Bessemer was gonna have to be opposed to Vivian, which we always knew anyway. This is just literally me having the idea for the first time, but I think it's possible that was why Bessemer had to leave. Because they knew we were going to find those connections between them. And it is improper for them to be the ones fighting and arguing against Vivian Lee Thoreen because she worked with Bruce, the lawyer there. And, maybe Bessemer Trust Company itself could have still represented Britney, but they couldn't have used Bruce Ross. And maybe it was just a big, who knows. I'm planning on looking more into this. This is like a developing story. So please help me fill in these holes because something weird is going on here. Maybe it's all legal, but that leads us to the next question of whether it should be. Should this be legal? For them to all know each other, all be friendly like that. I mean, the first question that Penny asked was, does your firm have a large trusts and estates division or something like that? They have a good practice for that. And it's kind of like, I understand the common sense of that question because you need to fight fire with fire. You have to have that human power. But do you really necessarily want to incentivize a system where all these people all know each other? They're not fighting with each other. They're supposed to be representing their client's best interest. Jamie and Britney are opposed to each other and have been since 2019, at least whenever Britney told the judge that all this stuff happened. So is it really okay for a system to exist where everybody can be friends and kiki and do conferences together and luncheons together and write books together and do all this other stuff together, and can they accurately and adequately represent their clients' best interests? Is it possible that we need some people from these smaller firms to be able to come in and say, listen, no, my firm doesn't have a huge trust and estates practice, but I know corruption when I look it in the eye. I know, malpractice and breaches of fiduciary duty, whether I have a large trust and estates practice or not, but I definitely think something weird is going on here. Could it be legal? Could it all be above the belt? Could it all be proper? And could they find technical loopholes to get out of making this, seem as weird as it is? Sure. But let's apply logic, truth, and common sense, as usual, to the scenario and ask ourselves if it's really common sense that Bruce Ross would be able to have adequately and accurately represented Britney's best interests as Bessemer's lawyer, as an independent fiduciary in this case. And the common sense answer to me is probably not. He probably could have, or would have let his personal relationship to Vivian affect how he handled the case. And I think it was a very, very wise decision for Bessemer to pull out. Now, I don't know what happened in those 7, 8, 10 months between when they were ordered to be conservator and not. I've heard mixed reports on whether they actually received any of Britney's accounting, whether they actually started doing any work. They claim that they didn't, but I've seen elsewhere that they did have some of the books and they did have some of the records of the estate and the conservatorship. I don't know. It raises more questions than it answers that all these people work together, and it just makes you think, is there only 10 lawyers to choose from in conservatorship law? Bessemer Trust Company isn't even based in California. Now, the office that it would have enlisted would have been there, but it's who are all these people? What are their connections to each other? And is it necessarily all in good faith? I just don't know. But those are the things I found this morning.